All right, let me take you back to a time when the skies weren't just blue expanses but battlegrounds where humanity's ingenuity and ambition clashed in ways no one had ever seen before. We're talking about World War II, folks. The war that didn't just change borders or politics, it revolutionized how we fight in the air. And at the heart of this transformation, the birth of the first fighter jets. Grab your helmet and goggles, or maybe just your imagination, because we're diving into the story of how these groundbreaking machines redefined air combat forever. Before we get to the jets, let's set the stage. In the early days of aviation during WWII, most aircraft were powered by piston engines with propellers. Think Spitfires, Mustangs, and Messerschmitt Bf-109s. These planes were fast for their time, capable of speeds up to around 400 mph, but they had limits. They relied on mechanical complexity, struggled at high altitudes, and couldn't break through the sound barrier. Air combat was all about dogfighting, pilots twisting and turning in tight maneuvers to outwit their opponents. It was thrilling, yes, but also incredibly dangerous. Pilots faced not only enemy fire but also the limitations of their own aircraft. Something needed to change, and fast. Now imagine being a pilot in the mid-1940s and hearing rumors about a new kind of engine, one that could propel planes faster than anything anyone had ever seen. That's exactly what happened when engineers developed the jet engine. Instead of relying on propellers, jet engines worked by sucking in air, compressing it, mixing it with fuel, and igniting the mixture to create thrust. This meant smoother, more powerful acceleration and the ability to reach unprecedented speeds. Suddenly, the sky wasn't big enough to contain the potential of aerial warfare. But here's the kicker. Both the Allies and Axis powers were racing to perfect this technology. If there's one name you need to know in the history of fighter jets, it's the Messerschmitt Me 262. Nicknamed the Schwalbe, Swallow, or Sturmvogel, Stormbird, this German marvel became the world's first operational jet-powered fighter plane. Introduced in 1944, the Me 262 was a beast. It could hit speeds of over 540 mph, nearly 100 mph faster than any Allied piston-engine fighter. Armed with cannons and rockets, it was devastatingly effective against bombers like the B-17 Flying Fortress. Pilots reported feeling untouchable as they zipped past slower adversaries. However, the Me 262 wasn't without its flaws, maintenance issues. Jet engines were cutting-edge tech, which meant frequent breakdowns. Limited numbers. By the time the Me 262 entered service, Germany was already struggling to produce enough planes due to resource shortages and Allied bombing campaigns. Strategic timing. Although advanced, the Me 262 arrived too late to turn the tide of the war. Still, its impact was undeniable. It proved that jet-powered fighters were the future of air combat. While Germany was busy fielding the Me 262, Britain wasn't sitting idle. Enter the Gloster Meteor, the first operational Allied jet fighter. Developed under strict secrecy, the Meteor took to the skies in 1944, making Britain the second nation to deploy jet-powered aircraft in combat. Unlike the sleek Me 262, the Meteor looked clunky and utilitarian, but don't underestimate it. With twin Rolls-Royce Welland turbojet engines, it could reach speeds of 460 mph. Its primary role? Intercepting V-1 flying bombs launched by Germany toward London. Meteors shot down several of these deadly weapons, earning their place in history. Though it never saw direct combat against German jets, the Meteor paved the way for post-war advancements in British aviation. So why does the introduction of jet fighters matter so much? Here's what changed. Speed became king. With jets capable of exceeding 500 mph, traditional dogfighting tactics went out the window. Speed and altitude advantage now dictated success in air battles. Pilots had to adapt quickly or risk becoming obsolete. Stealth and surprise. Jets could climb higher and faster than piston-engine planes, giving them an edge in surprise attacks. Imagine watching a bomber formation suddenly shredded by a streaking jet that seemed to appear out of nowhere. A new era of technology. Jet engines opened the door to innovations like swept wings, afterburners, and eventually stealth technology. Every modern fighter jet owes its existence to those early pioneers. Psychological warfare. Just knowing the enemy had jets while you didn't was enough to demoralize troops. The mere sight of an Me-262 slicing through formations must have felt like facing aliens from another planet. Here's the sad irony of the jet age's debut. Despite their revolutionary capabilities, neither the Me-262 nor the Meteor truly tipped the scales of WWII. Why? Timing matters. Both jets arrived near the end of the war, when resources were stretched thin and production numbers were limited. Infrastructure challenges. Jet engines required new materials, fuels, and maintenance protocols that strained industrial capacity. Tactical immaturity. Military leaders hadn't yet figured out how best to use jets strategically. Were they interceptors, bombers, dogfighters? Nobody knew for sure. In hindsight, the real winners of the jet race weren't individual nations. They were future generations of aviators and engineers who built upon these foundations. Fast forward to today, and the descendants of those first jets dominate the skies. From the supersonic F-16 Fighting Falcon to the stealthy F-22 Raptor, every modern fighter traces its DNA back to the Me-262 and Meteor. More importantly, the lessons learned from WWII shaped how militaries approach innovation. No longer would countries wait until wartime to develop game-changing technologies. Instead, they invested heavily in research and development to stay ahead of the curve. The first fighter jets may have been born out of desperation during one of humanity's darkest chapters, but they represent hope, progress, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. They remind us that even in the chaos of war, brilliance can emerge, and sometimes it changes everything. So next time you see a jet roar across the sky, remember its ancestors, the brave pilots and daring engineers who dared to dream of flight unbound by propellers, because without them, the world of air combat might still be stuck in the past. What do you think? Would you want to fly one of those early jets, flaws and all? Or are you glad we've come such a long way since then? Either way, the legacy of the first fighter jets will always soar above us.